Welcome to Mysteries to Die For and this toe tag. I am TG Wolff and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is normally a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. But today is a bonus episode that we call a toe tag. It's the first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, and thriller genre. Today's featured release is The Everest Enigma by Jeannette de Beauvoir. All right, let us jump into Chapter 1. I saw my first body when I was 9 years old. That sounds scary, but oddly enough, it didn't feel that way at the time. Something about the resilience of childhood, I expect. We'd gone to Algeria for my father to take celestial measurements in the Sahara. And one day, the local expat group asked him to accompany a doctor going to see a woman in a village outside of town. She was an American, they said, and would be reassured by the presence of other Americans. We went along with him because my mother wanted to, and that was back in the good days. The days before she started having serious conversations with the bust of Shakespeare in the front hall of our mansion in Boston's Back Bay. My family members each embrace obsession in their own way. My younger brother, Martin, went so mad for God, he had to become a priest, albeit an Episcopal one, so he can still enjoy some of the finer things in life. My father, following a patriarchal tradition of obsessive eccentricities, devotes his life to stargazing and traveling to stargaze, while my older brother, Philip, turned those same stars into scientific objects and spends his days teaching astrophysics. And my mother, well, the less said about my mother, some days, the better. I expect we each have something terribly wrong with us. So my parents and I went bumping along the track in the Land Rover, with the doctor explaining that she'd been screaming, the American woman, something about great birds blotting out the sun. Ergo poisoning, he added. It happens. By the time we arrived, the woman had died, and there was fear still etched in her face, fear of those dark wings she'd seen in the skies. Memorable. And so, I saw my first body when I was 9. I wonder now if that meant anything, pointed me in a direction I didn't even know I was taking, that would be revealed only once I went to Nepal. The visitor came soon after I was contemplating the dispiriting contents of my refrigerator. I periodically go on diets, and the first step in any diet is clearing out anything remotely delicious from your kitchen. And then, of course, that first night finds you staring at a hard-boiled egg, a can of tomato juice, some healthy-looking grain, and an apple that's seen better days. I pulled up the online delivery menu from The Queue, my favorite local Chinese restaurant. I could go back to the diet tomorrow. So when the buzzer rang downstairs, I flung the door open with enthusiasm achieved only by a person who's been dieting for a full 8 hours. Instead of the delivery guy with a bag full of goodies, however, I was looking at a slightly older than middle-aged woman in an anorak with the hood up. "Yes?" I said. She sniffed and wiped an arid snowflake from her cheek. "Are you Abbie Brandford?" "Yes," I said automatically. "Can I help you?" The gray eyes looked me over, shrewd, intelligent, and extremely thorough. I wonder what she made of what she saw, because I can be a little startling at first. A tallish young woman, chin-length hair, currently an experimental vivid blue, and brown eyes behind glasses. "You answered my post," she said calmly. I stared at her. "Excuse me?" "My post," she repeated, exasperation creeping into her voice. "I put a post up on the intranet, at Harvard." At that moment, the dinner delivery arrived, and the driver impatiently shouldered past her. "Here you go." I had the tip ready. "Thanks," I said, grabbing the food and hoping this woman would take the hint and leave. "Well," she said, eyeing the bag, "you'll want to get to your dinner." "Yes," I agreed. She stepped forward. "So let's get inside. There's supposed to be a heavy snow after midnight." She caught my eye. "Well, of course I won't be staying past midnight," she said. "But with the timing of things, well, I wanted to do the interview as soon as possible, of course." "Interview?" The wind was screaming down Acorn Street. The most photographed street in Boston is also one of the narrowest and a perfect wind tunnel, and my dinner was getting cold. I gave up and let her in. 5 minutes later, we were sitting rather cozily in my living room, her coat and hat hung up in the hall, fire blazing merrily along, boxes of fragrant Chinese food between us. "Are you sure you don't want anything?" I asked for about the third time. I am nothing if not polite, even to people who are clearly off their rockers. No, dear," she said, fluffing the pillow beside her, settling in. Seen in the light, she had no-nonsense, short, salt-and-pepper hair, with lots of laugh wrinkles around her eyes. Nothing distracted, however, from the sharpness in those eyes. "Since your memory is clearly failing you," she said, "I'll remind you that I'm Emma Caulfield. I put up an ad for a research assistant to go with me to Nepal." I'd just opened the chopstick packet. "Nepal?" "Well, yes, of course, Nepal," she said, frowning. "Really, dear, do you usually repeat what people say to you? Do you want the job or not?" I put everything down. There was a glimmer of an idea at the back of my mind. Harvard perforce means Philip, and this was exactly something Philip would think was funny. I have a feeling my brother answered your post on my behalf," I said carefully. She was unfazed. "Well, then he must have known you'd want the job." "Going to Nepal?" She nodded. "Going to Nepal." I thought about it. It wasn't actually a totally insane idea. My brothers and I are that most hated of species, trust fund babies. And Philip and I have spent a substantial part of our inheritances collecting academic letters after our names, probably to prove something to someone. Well, I've never quite worked that part out. I was into the second year of holding my doctorate in history and hadn't yet found any work in academia. Boston and Cambridge might be the hub of higher education, but even lectureships are harder and harder to come by and guarded jealously. And here's the thing, truth be told. I was slowly coming to the conclusion that I didn't actually want a career in higher education. I liked the research part, liked being able to figure out what was really happening, the story behind the story, preserved for posterity. Learning about the people who weren't just stick figures, real people who lived and loved and breathed and should be remembered, bringing them back to life, somehow, if only on paper. Teaching, yeah, maybe not so much. Faculty interactions, oh, definitely not. And while it's true I'd never need to work for a living, that didn't mean I didn't actually want to contribute to the world in some way. I just wasn't yet seeing how. All that meant, of course, was there wasn't anything tying me to Boston at the moment. "What," I asked, "are you going to Nepal for?" "Well, research, of course, dear." She looked puzzled. I thought that would have been obvious. I didn't say anything, and she sighed gustily. "I'm Emma Caulfield," she said again. "Yes, I got that part." "I'm a writer," she said. I continued to stare blankly at her, and she started looking annoyed. "I write historical romances," she said. "I'm on the New York Times bestseller list." And there it was. I hadn't heard of her for good reason. I subscribed to the academic historian's dim view of historical fiction in general and historical romances in particular. It's an automatic judgment we make. Slipshod research, damsels in distress, Regency dresses. I met her eyes. "Bodice rippers," I suggested, nodding. To my surprise, she laughed. "Well, good for you, Abigail Bradford," she said. "I was starting to think you didn't have any gumption at all." There it was again, that sharp mind behind those eyes. "You fraud," I said slowly. "You knew I'd react like that." Emma nodded. She looked thoroughly satisfied. "I am researching my next novel," she said crisply. "I am going to Kathmandu, and then on to some trekking. I'm planning on getting up to Everest Base Camp, and I certainly don't want to do that alone." Her expression dared me to say anything. "I'm good at asking questions and taking in the scenery and all that, but I'm not always able to organize what I'm doing, and This time around, I need some specialist help. I want you to help research what it was like for people on the mountain, people in the country, people in the world in the early 1920s. She paused, and a trace of something vulnerable slipped into her voice. I also need someone to go with me. I used to like traveling on my own. I've done it for years, but not so much anymore. There's too much to keep track of, and I need to be thinking and writing, so I need someone to go with me. As a researcher, I said. She didn't meet my eyes. I've never done this before, she confessed. I've always done everything on my own. But this time feels different, and I'm not about to get a reputation for slipshod work, so I need some help, some research, some organizing, some travel, and someone to tell me when I'm going off in the wrong direction. That's why I need a historian. You. Not just any historian, me. I'd remember that later. You're looking for facts? I asked sweetly. That must be the first for a romance novelist. Historical romance novelist, she corrected. Her eyes were steely. So are you in, or what? I had a feeling I was going to regret this. I'm in, I said. Now, can we eat? I Googled her, of course, the moment she was out the door. Emma Caulfield, it transpired, was indeed a big name in the genre. She'd been writing novels for the past 30-odd years. She'd been part of the big Regency romance movement, had switched things around for a while with an American colonial period, and even set a small series in prehistoric Britain. And she was right. Her novels were consistently on the bestseller list. She must be making a fortune. The romance bestseller list, I reminded my friend Justine when I told her about the late-night visit. We were still deep in February, and we'd come off the ice skating at Boston Common to the warmth of my fireplace, a pot of tea, and a bag of popcorn. You know, Justine said, stretching out a leg toward the heat, you could manage to be just a little bit more judgmental if you tried. Do you think? I smiled and refilled her tea. I was only half serious. What I think, she said carefully, is that you might be surprised. Romance novels have come a long way since the "Oh, John, oh, Mary" days. And how, you know this how? I asked. She laughed. Come on, Abbie. Sex and the City changed everything. There are feminist romances now. And your Emma Caulfield, she has a good reputation. I think she might surprise you. I really do. God, I think my toes are finally thawing. She slanted me a look. So you're going with her? To Kathmandu? I nodded. I think so. You know, you don't have to, just because Philip had one of his harebrained ideas. The trouble is, I said slowly, he's usually right, and it actually sounds like it could be fun and interesting. The work, the travel, the research, there's a goal, you know, something that might mean something. She nodded, her eyes on the flames. Justine knows about my past. Philip and Martin and I are 13th generation of an old Massachusetts family. Check it out. The first governor of what would eventually become the Commonwealth was named Bradford. He was on the Mayflower, that first miserable winter in Provincetown and Plymouth. Later, during the Gilded Age, the Bradfords became rich beyond understanding. Though they had one saving grace: philanthropy. Hospitals, learning institutions, the arts. My ancestors helped build the knowledge-based economy that still characterizes Boston. I have an ambivalent relationship with my family wealth. Well, to be fair, with much of my family itself, too. And I'm not always looking for ways to put it to good use. Oh, I'm sorry. And I am always looking for ways to put it to good use. I'm not interested in a trust fund that does nothing but increase itself. I give away a lot of money in a whole lot of ways. And that's good. That's important. But I'd like to be doing something important, too. Just hadn't figured out what. So what's the plan? Justine asked. What exactly is she researching? I shut my eyes. I can nearly always visualize conversations when I do. She's doing something about an Everest expedition back in the 1920s, I said. There was an Englishman called George Mallory who went up and didn't come down. And there's controversy about whether he reached the summit or not, which is an important question among mountaineers. I paused. And apparently, he was incredible eye candy, as was his wife, so maybe it's a love story between them. I found I was smiling. Okay, so maybe there was something more to romance novels than I assumed. She wants me to go to Kathmandu ahead of her, and she'll join me after she's done some sort of conference in New York. Wow, that sounds exotic anyway, said Justine. Why not? It might just be what you need while you decide what you're going to do with your life. That was, of course, the question. I'm intrigued, I admitted. Philip was right. It sounds exotic, it sounds interesting, and it's the other side of the world. Top of the world, said Justine. Everest's the highest mountain on Earth. I'm not actually climbing Everest, I reminded her. No, she conceded. You need to be a little more of an outdoors girl for that. Still, it might lead to other things. Like what? I asked suspiciously. Justine grinned. Romance? She suggested. I threw the popcorn at her. Excerpt from the Journal of George Mallory. Mont Villain, Swiss-Italian Alps, 1904. Just when I thought I was going to be all right, the heaves started again. Harry was looking miserable, though it was unclear to me whether that was because of sitting so long in the cold or because of my constant sickness. I've been near others who are throwing up, and I know what that sound triggers in the listener's gut. Sorry, I managed to gasp. It's all right, he said, though I don't for a moment think his heart was in it. I didn't know what was the worst thing about my predicament, that the rest of the climbing party had trusted Harry and me to crack on to the summit, and we were within grasp of it, or that I so very sincerely wished I could die. When you're well enough, Harry said, almost conversationally, we'll start down again. It was ignoble. I'd been a member of the Ice Club for almost 6 years, having ascended several substantial peaks and even practiced snowcraft in the Scottish Highlands, so I absolutely shouldn't have been bothered by altitude. Once a year, Graham Irving, my old schoolmaster from Winchester, chose a few, quote, recruits, as he called us, for an annual trip to the Alps. This year, this brilliant year, he'd chosen me, George Mallory, taking me away from the schoolroom, offering me a window on the world far above it. It was a thundering great honor, and I botched it completely. Never mind, said Graham, when at length we made it down to the camp. Lewis and Harry can go up tomorrow. And you, he added, turning to me, need to do more climbing. That night, I lay awake long after the fire had been extinguished, listening to the wind catching at the tent flaps and planning my physical regimen. I was realizing one cannot treat mountaineering as a hobby, to be taken up or put down at will. Well, that would all change, I vowed to myself. Never again would the name George Mallory be associated with altitude sickness. Never again would I fail so miserably at something I wanted so badly to attain. Toward dawn, Harry poked his head in the tent. Well then, he drawled, looking at me. Time for the odd egg and toast before we leave? That time, my stomach stayed where it was supposed to. And in the end, we made it up the Grand Combin, and of course the view from the top was simply ripping. We were all sure it was the very best day of our lives. All right, so that is the first chapter of the Everest Enigma, and then the second chapter, well, it's actually not a second chapter. It is an excerpt from the Journal of George Mallory. So it's sort of a bit in between the first and second chapters. How's that for vague? Let me tell you a little bit about my review. So the Everest Enigma is an adventure amateur sleuth. Abbie Brandford, Ph.D., is on the adventure of a lifetime, accompanying romance novelist Emma Caulfield to Mount Everest Base Camp. Abbie's task is to support Emma's research for her next book by a deep dive into the history of George Mallory, famed mountaineer who died attempting to summit. The journey pushes Abbie to her limits physically as it challenges her intellectually. The danger is real, more so when rumors, thefts, and death come frightfully close. So the bottom line, the Everest Enigma is for you if you like your adventures tinted with mystery and steeped in history. All right, let's go a little bit deeper into this. So romance author Emma Caulfield, who you got to meet, her next book will be based on the romantic figure of George Mallory. He was a British mountaineer, a father, and a war veteran, and he made his living by chronicling and lecturing on his experiences. He died on Everest in 1923. But did he die on his way up, or is he on his way down? It's a debate that Emma is jumping into, and now she just needs a research assistant. Enter Abbie Brandford. With a newly minted PhD in history and no plans to use it, Abbie signs on as the research assistant, travel companion, and anything else the 60-ish writer needs. The adventure starts in Kathmandu, where Abbie is the advance guard setting up the details of their trek to base camp. An outsider, everything about this world is new. But it's clear to her that everyone has secrets, and some are darker than others. So the shining star of this book is the presentation of the landscape, the people, and the culture of Nepal, the mountaineers, and de Beauvoir's passion and deep connection with this land and its people shines through with her eloquent language, transporting us to a place that only a lucky few readers will have seen with their own eyes. We taste the sourness of the local tea, we feel the crisp, cool temperatures, we're charmed by the locals, and we are awed by the glory of the goddess. I found myself eagerly coming back to the story just to be in the shadow of Everest. The Everest Enigma is shelved as a mystery, but in my opinion, that is not the best description of this story. The mystery is a ride-along with limited investigating. So I do think that if it was considered as a mystery, that many mystery lovers would be left wanting more. The Everest Enigma really resonates in the adventure genre. By one definition, the adventure genre focuses on the hero undertaking an exciting and perilous journey in pursuit of a goal, such as retrieving an artifact or uncovering a hidden truth. So when we look at it implied in terms of the Everest Enigma, we do have a perilous journey for Abbie, as she is pushed to her physical limits by the terrain, the elevation, the food, and the environment. The search of hers and Emma's bag and the theft of Emma's flash drive lend to a dangerous nature of their mission. They have a goal. They are working to unravel what is the truth about George Mallory's death, and that being, did he die on the way up or the way down? Now, on the adventure scale, this one is at the sweeter end, so the perils are breathtaking more than heart-pounding. So a common book in this genre would be the Da Vinci Code. So there is not nearly as much, there is no blood and guts in this, but there is real risk, real chase, real danger. So Abbie is our reliable narrator who tells us the story as it unfolds. So her role is not to push the plot forward, but to go along with it and to document and relate it to us. So she does this without having knowledge of the inner thoughts or plans of Emma or the other characters that include Everest guides Jack, Richard, and Mark. So in this sense, she's in the classic role of sort of a sidekick narrator. So if you think about Watson to Sherlock Holmes, we're getting the story perspective from Abbie, but without all the knowledge that Emma and everybody else has. Standing at the end and looking to the front, this adventure is pretty cool. It weaves a very modern experience with a historical interpretation of the life and times in George Mallory. I really enjoyed everything about that part, learning about George's history. I couldn't imagine what his wife went through at some parts of it. And then, the challenges that Abbie was facing, really coming out of a city and then turning into somebody who's trekking across Nepal. When it came to the mystery, the resolution of that left me with more than a few questions, but it was absolutely overshadowed by the awesomeness of the adventure. So this deliberately paced adventure holds high entertainment value for readers who enjoy the journey and being transported to exotic locales. The Everest Enigma is promoted by Partners in Crime Tours and is available from Amazon and other book retailers. The link is in the show notes. About Jeannette de Beauvoir. So she is an award-winning author of historical and mystery thriller fiction and a poet whose work has appeared in numerous literary journals and anthologies. She has written 3 mystery series, along with a number of standalone novels. Her work, quote, demonstrates a total mastery of the mystery/suspense genre, unquote. That's from Midwest Book Review. She is a member of the Authors Guild, the Mystery Writers of America, Sisters in Crime, and the Historical Novels Society. She lives and works in a seaside cottage on Cape Cod, where she is also a local theater critic and hosts an arts-related program on WOMR, a Pacifica radio affiliate. Wondering what to read after you finish the Everest Enigma? Partners in Crime Tours is your ultimate destination for all things mystery, crime, thriller, and cozy. Since 2011, they've been working to fill bookshelves with gripping and heart-pounding reads. Discover new mystery series and connect with other fans with Partners in Crime. Look up Partners in Crime Tours on the web or on your favorite social media. And authors, whether you're looking to promote your latest thriller, discover a new mystery series, or connect with fellow fans of the genre, PICT has you covered. Check out their promotion options that come with the personal attention of a dedicated coordinator. Join us next week for Season 8, Anything But Murder, where grave robbing is our murderless crime. It's Have You Seen This Body? By me, TG Wolff. All right, Jack, take us out.